The Buffalo Bills. Terrell Bernard, linebacker. Bernard signed a lucrative 4-year, $42.1 million contract with the Bills last offseason, making him the 17th highest-paid linebacker in the league. Bernard had a rocky year with Buffalo this year, battling through multiple injuries, and is currently going through a calf issue he suffered in Week 17. He missed the Bills' first playoff game against the Jags, but could come back next week in the divisional game against the Broncos in Denver. The fourth-year linebacker has $23.8 million guaranteed in this deal, and inked $14.1 million when he signed his name on the dotted line last March. The tough truth for Bills fans is that he was one of the worst linebackers in football this year. PFF gave him a 48.8 overall grade, which makes him the 10th worst overall linebacker in the NFL this year. Want him to stop the rush? No problem. He ranked as the 13th worst linebacker this season. How about coming up with big stops and making surefire open field tackles? Of course he can. He was 4th worst in the league in tackling grade. For someone who had 6.5 sacks in 2023, he's had just one in the past 2 seasons combined. Yikes! He's also never forced a fumble in his 4-year career so far. It can't be all doom and gloom though, right? He could just be an all-time coverage backer, able to lock down running backs and tight ends and receivers streaking across the middle of the field. Wrong again. Bernard clocked in with the 16th worst pass coverage grade for linebackers and 2nd worst in yards per catch allowed. The Carolina Panthers. J.C. Horn, cornerback. One of the most exciting young DBs in all of football is in fact one of the most overpaid fraudulent box score bandit corners in the game. While Horn tied for 2nd in the league this year, with 5 interceptions on the season, the rest of his game was straight doo-doo. JC signed a whopping 4-year $100 million extension in March 2025, making him the highest-paid DB in NFL history at the time, with a massive $72 million guaranteed and $46.7 million guaranteed at signing. Cha-ching, this dude knocked it out the park with this deal. Does anyone have his agent's phone number? I'd like to hire him for myself. Horn clocked in with the 20th worst cornerback overall defensive grade, according to PFF this year. Oh look, it's Bijan Robinson, division rival taking a toss to the outside with Horn on the edge to stop him. Dang, JC was the 14th worst corner in rush defense this year, and the 3rd worst tackling one. In fact, he was the absolute biggest stinker in missed tackle percent at 30.2% of his attempts. But he's an absolute lockdown corner, right? Think again. He was 8th worst in yards allowed per catch at 14.3, allowed 5 touchdowns, and despite being tied first with 5 interceptions at the position, he was the 2nd worst in pass breakups with just 2. This dude plays corner like I play roulette. I mean, it's either red or black. In his case, it's either interception or touchdown allowed. The Chicago Bears. DJ Moore, wide receiver. DJ Moore signed a well-deserved 4-year $110 million contract extension with Chicago after being traded from Carolina before the 2024 season began, making him the 13th highest-paid wide receiver in football. Since becoming the Bears' alpha receiver, they've since added Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, and Colson Loveland to their high-octane attack. This has enabled them to take one of the biggest leaps from last year to this year, with first-year coach Ben Johnson at the helm dialing up diabolical plays, destroying the entire league in the process with all of their weapons. The problem is, there's too many mouths to feed, and Moore has seen his share of the love land less and less throughout this season. Odunze, he might be, except not really. He just had the game winner against Green Bay in the biggest thriller of the wildcard weekend, but sprinkled in a horrendous drop as well. It would be a huge burden if he retreats even further and makes a swift exit, losing more targets next season going into his age 29 season. This year was a mixed bag for Moore. He ranked 66th in PFF receiving grade out of all wideouts. He only hauled in 62.5% of targets, which put him at 61st for all receivers. He was 71st in yards per route run, which is putrid. He also ranked 2nd worst out of all receivers, despite not even being classified in diva territory, like the likes of Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Pickens, etc., with 8. He was horrible against man coverage, ranking 74th out of 99 in yards per route run against man. He was also 63rd out of 70 in yards per route run from the slot. No matter where you put DJ on the field this season, he did not live up to his 13th highest paid wide receiver status. The Denver Broncos. Evan Engram, tight end. Engram signed a 2-year $23 million deal with the Broncos last offseason, adding a much-needed middle-of-the-field safety blanket weapon for 2nd-year quarterback Bo Nix. The $11.5 million per year for the veteran tight end made him the 12th highest paid in the league. After coming off of 3 great years in Jacksonville, which rejuvenated his entire career, the ceiling fell from overhead and he came back down to earth when arriving in the Mile High City. Engram finished the season with just 50 catches, only 3 more than a year ago, a season in which he only played 9 games in. The Broncos brought in this new target monster for Nix to pepper, and he basically just said, "Nah, fam, I'm good," and looked elsewhere, improving his completions and yards this year. Engram graded out as the 40th ranked receiving tight end out of 47. He was 31st out of 47 in yards per route run. Saw his targets had one of the least product average depths at just 4.2 yards down the field, making him have to haul butt down the field with his declining speed when he did catch something. He was also tied for 10th worst at the position with 4 drops. On top of this, he was 40th in passer rating when targeted at tight end. But okay, he's got to be able to do something right? Guess again. He ranked 104 out of 113 eligible tight ends in run blocking ranking, and he was downright disturbingly horrendous against zone coverage, dropping 10% of targets. The Green Bay Packers, Trevon Diggs, cornerback. Diggs wowed the entire league when he broke out for an insane 11 interceptions for the Cowboys in his second year in 2021. The crazy thing is that most of his on-field production, his career has been smoke and mirrors. The Cowboys handed him a huge 5-year $97 million extension in July 2023, making him the 10th highest paid corner in football at $19.4 million per year. His time since the extension has been injury-plagued, 22 games in the past 3 seasons. His on-field production during that time has not been the best, leading the Cowboys to waive him late this year. Green Bay scooped him up in anticipation for a deep playoff run, paying him $500,000 for just one regular season game. In the loss to the Bears last weekend, Diggs logged just a single snap. Now the Packers are stuck in no man's land with his contract and a declining talent. Diggs was exposed all season long, ranking 62nd out of 95 corners in overall defensive grade. This guy can't stop the run coming his way for Jack, ranking 84th out of 95 in rushing defensive grade at the position as well. Trevon allowed the 9th worst receiving percentage, giving up 76.2% of targets headed his way. As long as he kept things in front of him, it couldn't have been all that bad though. Wrong, he was worst in football in yards per catch allowed, with 17.9 per catch. He also didn't have a single pass breakup or interception the entire season, playing in 9 games this year. That is historically awful for a starting corner. He was the single worst in passer rating allowed when targeted as well, giving up a rating of 157.2. For context to how bad that is, Drake May led the league in individual quarterback passer rating this year with 113.5. So, every time Trevon Diggs was targeted, it was like Drake May and mini Drake May throwing passes at the same time to opposite parts of the field. Diggs also finished as the 4th worst ranked cornerback in receiving percent allowed in man coverage. If you put this dude on an island, even against some of your bottom tier receivers, it was a good chance they'd come down and moss him every play if the ball went their direction. The Houston Texans, Christian Kirk, wide receiver. Kirk signed a 4-year, $72 million deal with the Jaguars in 2022, with $37 million of it guaranteed, making him the 25th highest paid wide receiver. In his first year with Jacksonville, he popped off for a career season with 84 catches, 1.1 thousand yards, and 8 scores. In the 3 seasons since then, he's been plagued by a variety of injuries and has definitely lost a step or two in the process. This past offseason, the Texans acquired Kirk from the Jags for a 2026 7th-round pick. He'll become a free agent in 2026, so he's basically a 1-year rental for Houston. He finished this regular season with just 28 catches for 239 yards and 1 score. Remarkably, in the first playoff game against the Steelers, Kirk came out of nowhere and flashed his vintage self, curb-stomping Pittsburgh's secondary for 8 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown on the road. This game in itself, when it mattered the most, could count as a void for this selection. But to spend around $16 million for the type of wide receiver 4-level production he produced all season, it leaves a lot to be desired. According to PFF, Kirk ranked 84th out of 90 receivers in overall rating this year. He finished 84th out of 90 in catch percentage of targets at just 56%. He was also 87th out of 90 in yards per route run, and he had hands made of bricks with 3 drops on just 50 total targets. Despite only being targeted 50 times this year, Stroud threw 4 interceptions when looking his way, which tied for 14th most in the league of any receiver. In fact, Stroud was so abysmal when targeting Kirk this year that Kirk had the lowest quarterback rating of any receiver in football when targeted at just 42. To put that number into context, Vikings quarterback Max Brosmer finished the year with a quarterback rating of 53. So yeah, when targeting Christian Kirk this season, Stroud played somewhere between the level of Gardner Minshew and Brosmer. This one gets even worse if we dissect the numbers by coverage type as well. Kirk was 7th worst against man coverage and had the 2nd lowest yards per catch against zone. All in all, despite the putrid regular season numbers, all it takes is one moment in the playoffs to change everything. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Dyami Brown, wide receiver. The fifth-year receiver signed a one-year $10 million contract with the Jags this past offseason, coming over from Washington, making him the 35th highest-paid wide receiver. The former third-round pick inked this fat deal despite never seeing more than 40 targets and 308 yards in a season. An overall pretty questionable decision by Jacksonville's front office. I guess banking on potential upside than past production was not the move here. The positive about this situation is that they blinked, and now he's out the building, and they can wake up in the morning and pretend like this never happened. Brown only had 20 catches for 227 yards and 1 score on the year. He was such a non-factor that even despite Travis Hunter being out for the year, he's been a healthy scratch since Week 13. The breakout of Parker Washington and emergence of Jacoby Myers at the trade deadline really put the nail in the coffin for any playing time for Diami. This deal was so awful, when you put it into perspective, that he's making $7 million more per year than Brian Thomas Jr., and $9 million more than Parker Washington, who just went for over 100 yards in the playoff loss to the Bills. You really want to rip your hair out. The Los Angeles Chargers, Mekhi Becton, guard. Becton signed a 2-year $20 million deal with the Chargers in the offseason after playing 1 year with the Eagles and helping them win the Super Bowl last year. Coming to sunny California, after spending the beginning of his career on the East Coast in the cold, didn't do him any good. The 22nd highest-paid guard in football started 14 games for the Chargers this year and performed pretty horrendously. He was ranked the second worst guard in overall offensive ranking and the worst guard in run-blocking efficiency. For a squad that relies heavily on the run with Omarion Hampton and Kamani Vidal at the helm, those boys did not have a fun time running behind Big Becton. He's got to be better in passing protection though, right? Well, technically yes, but he still finished as the 5th worst guard in that department and finished bottom 10 at the position in quarterback hits allowed, quarterback hurries allowed, and quarterback pressures allowed. This trifecta of performance made him the de facto second worst rated guard in pressure efficiency. If you are wondering why Justin Herbdaddy was on the ground so much in the playoff game, you know who to DM on Instagram and ask. The Los Angeles Rams, Tutu Atwell, wide receiver. Atwell signed the same one-year, $10 million contract that Diami Brown of the Jags inked, making him tied for the 35th highest-paid wide receiver. Atwell has shown flashes in the past when the Rams' receiver room was plagued with injuries, even finishing last year with 562 total yards on just 62 targets. This year it just went all downhill though. The Rams brought in Devontae Adams to take over for Cooper Kupp, and we all know what Puka is about in that offensive attack. LA also elevated Konata Mumpfield, their 7th-round pick this year, into an expanded role in the offense later in the season, and ran more 3 tight end sets than anyone in the league too. All of this left little room for Atwell to do his thing on the field. He became an afterthought pretty quickly, and finished this year with just 6 catches for 192 yards and a touchdown. To put that into context, he made $667,000 per target and $1.67 million per catch this year. He made $9 million more than Puka this year as well. The New England Patriots, Christian Barmore, defensive tackle. This one was going to be another big body on the D-line. Milton Williams, who is the 2nd highest paid defensive tackle in the league, but finished as the 38th overall graded one this year. After his 2-sack performance against the Chargers though, it just doesn't feel right. So we'll go with his psycho twin, Barmore, who signed an extension with the Pats for 4 years $83 million in 2024 with $41.8 million guaranteed after he broke out for 8.5 sacks in 2023. Since signing that deal, he's only had 3 sacks after appearing in just 4 games last year due to injury. His $20.75 million per year average salary makes him the 13th highest paid defensive tackle in the league. For someone paid that much, you would expect him to finish better than the 69th ranked defensive tackle in the league this year, and the absolute worst, 90th rated rush defense defensive tackle. His saving grace from being the absolute bottom of the barrel was his passing pressures. He finished tied for 9th at the position in total pressures with 50, despite only having 2 sacks to show for it. He also finished tied 4th in quarterback hurries with 39. One of his worst facets was his tackling ability this year. He missed 25.7% of his tackle opportunities, putting him at 4th worst at the position. Hopefully Barmore can bounce back and return to his 2023 form next season on one of the most exciting young teams in the league. The Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley, running back. Saquon signed a historic 2-year $41.2 million deal with the Eagles last offseason, making him the highest-paid running back in league history. He went bananas in his first season with the Eagles, rushing for over 2,000 yards on 5.8 yards per carry, and finishing with 15 total touchdowns. On the way to their Super Bowl, he had 499 rushing yards in just 4 games, including 205 against the Rams, and 5 total touchdowns in those games as well. A truly historic season and run by Barkley, and a Super Bowl ring to show for it, make this one tough to gauge. But at what cost? The eighth-year back is now headed into his age 29 season, and his production fell off a cliff this year, rushing for almost 1,000 yards less than last year, and seeing his yards per carry dwindle down to just over 4 per touch. He also scored about half as many touchdowns this year, finishing with just 7 on the ground. His yards per attempt this season ranked 21st out of 29 running backs, behind guys like Tyrone Tracy and Tony Pollard. He finished 24th out of 29 at the position in total offensive ranking, and for someone who's such a force as he is, finished 25th out of 29 in yards after contact per attempt. He's also lost a step when it comes to the receiving game, finishing 3rd worst in that grade, and finished bottom 10 in elusive rating as well. Despite the decline, he's still running behind one of the best offensive lines in football, and he helped Philly win another ring, so not all is lost with this one. The Pittsburgh Steelers, DK Metcalf, wide receiver. Metcalf signed a humongous extension with the Steelers after being traded from Seattle this offseason. 4 years, $132 million, equating to $33 million per year, made him the 4th highest paid wide receiver in the league. Despite being paid as one of the elite receivers in football, DK disappeared at many points this year. He only finished with 99 targets. For a player making this much money, Old Man Rodgers should have been feeding him at least 3 more per game. He only topped 100 yards twice this year and scored just 6 touchdowns. He had 6 games under 40 yards receiving this year, which is just unacceptable for this kind of payday, and he was absolutely blanketed in the embarrassing loss Pittsburgh just suffered against the Texans at home, hauling in just 2 catches for 42 yards. For receivers who had over 90 targets on the season, he finished 27th in targets, 30th in catches, 23rd in yards, 18th in touchdowns. He performed more like a wide receiver 2 or 3 than a ball-hawking alpha this year. He also finished 10th worst in overall receiving ranking, behind guys like Week 11 breakout Michael Wilson and washed Keenan Allen. DK couldn't catch a thing headed his way, finished with the 10th worst drop rate, and 5th worst in catch percentage, at just 59.6% of his targets hauled in. For such a big-bodied receiver, you would expect this dude to haul in all his 50-50 balls and jump balls, but nah, he finished with the 7th worst catch and traffic success rate. He was also of course dead worst in the league with 8 penalties. And for the speed demon he is, he finished 28th out of 40 in deep ball receiving ranking. Overall, the Steelers thought they got their missing piece on offense in the offseason, but the Seahawks fleeced them and turned the 2nd-round pick they acquired into stud safety Nick Emenwari. The San Francisco 49ers, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver. We all know about this one. Ayuk signed a 4-year $120 million extension, putting him at $30 million per year, making him the 10th highest paid wide receiver in a long offseason saga before the 2024 season. Since then, he got injured almost midway through that season and has essentially ghosted the squad. When the Niners needed wide receivers the most, he flat out just bailed on the team. According to coach Kyle Shanahan, he hasn't talked to the team in months. No one knows where this dude is and what he's up to. He tore his ACL/MCL in late 2024, voided his 2026 guaranteed money with the team by not showing up for rehab, and is now on the reserve-left squad list. I didn't even know that list existed. I didn't want to include any injury-related players on this list, but this one is a unique one, and bro is 1.5 years past the injury. He will be lucky to find another team going forward after this meltdown, and will probably be done for completely. The former 2nd overall graded PFF wide receiver in 2023 had his whole prime in front of him, but it looks like he's thrown it all away. Niner faithful have rallied around what they do have though, and beat the Eagles on the road in the first game of the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks, Charles Cross, left tackle. The blindside protector of the present and future was picked 9th overall by the Hawks back in the 2022 draft. He just inked an insane 4-year $104 million extension days ago, averaging out to just over $26 million per season. This makes him the 4th highest paid left tackle in the league. He's still just 25 years old, but if you were paying one of the most important positions in football that much money, you'd expect top-tier production. Cross ranked out as the 26th rated overall block at tackle, 33rd ranked rushing blocker, and 16th pass blocker this year. He only allowed 2 sacks on the season, which is not bad considering Sammy D's happy feet in the pocket. Charles ranked 24th in hits allowed, and 18th in hurries allowed. He was 22nd at tackle in overall pack blocking efficiency, and ranked 15th in penalties with 5. The Hawks might have just said screw it, let's lock up this young talent for the bulk of his career, and not have to worry about the position anymore. The issue is that he might just be completely mediocre, but I guess when you're winning, average can be good so that you don't have to keep going back to the drawing board at one of the most sought-after positions to fill in the league.